Folks, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, P50 on Twitter, and today's episode, we're going to talk about personal loans, credit scores, and a lot more. My guest is Subhranshu Chattopadhyay, National Sales Head at CRIF. Hi, Mark. Subbu, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners. This is the first time we have CRIF Highmark on our show. Let's start with an introduction to what exactly is, what is CRIF Highmark all about? Tell us. Thank you.
Thank you, Anupam, for hosting me. A pleasure. Uh, CRIF IMARC is one of the four credit information companies licensed by the Reserve Bank. And this licensing regime came through in 2010 as an outcome of an act of the Indian Parliament called SICRA. And we began operations in 2010 by launching India's first microfinance bureau. Uh, and since then, between then and today, we are now India's first full service bureau. Now, what does that mean? That means that we help our lending partners take credit decisions on microloans, traditional retail assets, rural retail assets, and business loans. So we cover the entire spectrum from both the demand side and the supply side. Uh, and this is an outcome of our design philosophy, which always has been to say that we want to be the bureau for mass market solutions that either lenders, insurers, or telcos have to offer to their end consumers.
Sure.
So consequently, today more than 1,000 partners use our services every month for servicing their needs across their customer lifecycle journey. And it could be across customer acquisition, customer management, collections management, claims management, that entire gamut. Uh, Now, in continuation with this philosophy, we also work with our partners on custom consulting or transformation services.
Okay.
Now, the intent of that is essentially to allow them to build sustainable portfolios in their mass market products. But where we add value is essentially in giving them a solution that just enhances their competitive advantage in terms of their ability to use either information or analytics or solutions. And today, therefore, we are, the country's preferred bureau for uh, everything that's mass market, whether it's semi-urban and rural distribution, whether it's urban mass distribution, whether it's straight through mass market products or cash flow based small ticket lending or self-employed professional lending, all of it. So it's a journey in which we've reached several milestones, but it's a continuum
Very
in some
interesting.
sense.
In fact, I'm quite excited to talk about the specific segment of the credit market today in this episode because it's a segment that has boomed in the last 4 5 years. I was reading your report called Creditscape because folks, and you should
Correct.
check out the Cliff Highmark website. They've got a lot of interesting data that's free to read. So I happened to read volume 7 of this report called Creditscape. And I was really surprised to see the huge growth in personal loans. Of course, this is also backed by the fact that as us, when you look at the savings ratio of India, that's in fact gone down. My guess is it's probably halved from something like 35% of GDP to around 17, 18% of
True.
GDP. So walk us through this segment with a specific timeline here, how it shaped out during the pandemic, and I want some comment from you on this thing called checkout finance and payday loans. So personal finance, personal personal
Personal
loans,
loans.
how it shaped out during the pandemic, and checkout finance and payday loans. So payday loan is really interesting. Tell us, come on. Thank you.
Understood. So Anupam, let me just go back to the 18 months preceding the pandemic. I'll start from there because then it gives us a good reference point to understand what happened in the pandemic.
So this is somewhere around 2017, 2018
Yes,
types. Sure.
exactly.
Okay. Okay.
So if you recall, at that time the space got interesting because of a boom in fintech based personal loans. So over there, the mantra at that time was ease of customer acquisition. So how easily can you acquire a customer? And consequently, the focus was on low ticket lending. It was also a segment where the hypothesis was that you should distribute amongst what we call traditionally as digital savvy, and therefore in lower age groups, and consequently distribution was higher in those age groups. Now, the first thing that happened when this pandemic came was the change in this distribution pattern. So the credit supply or the supply of personal loans to this age group, which was actually driving a lot of that personal loan growth, that completely stopped. It
Right.
dried up.
Could you specify the age group? It just helps our listeners, get an idea.
So it was essentially between 18 to 30.
Oh,
That a
that's a
lot of
big one. Yeah.
yeah. So that was the age group that was driving distribution
Okay.
prior to pandemic, and here supply dried up. And even if you further looked at it, this you will see a higher dry up in, let's say, 18 to 25 than in 25 to 30. But not necessarily this was accompanied by a proportionate drop in the demand from this
Interesting.
age group. So essentially you had people who had built a culture on on essentially living off these loans, and maybe living off these loans is taking it a stretch too far, but actually who built a good amount of leverage within a very short period of time.
Wow. Okay.
And and therefore when the credit dried, we saw one very significant thing, that is the collections or the portfolio performance in this segment. This dropped very significantly. Now, if you think of it, then as a country, whether you look at the traditional lenders or whether you look at the fintechs, you will see that when we build our technical architecture, the first thing that comes to our mind is customer acquisition. And we place almost a disproportionate amount of our focus in building a perfect tech stack for acquisition. And in the process, we actually compromise the tech stack for customer management and collections.
Hmm. I like that term. Compromise. Okay. What? So, okay, go on. Go on. Sorry. I just thought that's interesting.
Yeah. And uh, yeah, and therefore the portfolio performance of this segment, what it told us, what the data told us. Now the data is actually the effect, no? So what is the cause? What the data told us essentially was that in personal loan segments, ticket sizes where there was actually a tech arc on collections. Um and my definition of tech arc is not just systems, but systems and business processes put together. Where there was a tech arc for collections, there the portfolio performance was better. But where the tech arc focus was on acquisitions, it absolutely fell through
Oh,
in the pandemic. Now, again, the age group that we spoke about, right? Part of the portfolio, part of the way the portfolio performed is, of course, attributable to what is an inherent risk. But part of it may also be attributable to this.
okay.
Okay. The second thing, and a very important thing that we saw, was a change in the market share of distribution between the different lenders.
Okay.
So what we saw essentially is that with the withdrawal of the NBFCs or the fintech driven lenders from this space, the private banks and the public sector banks came into this space and increased their distribution.
Huh.
Uh, and very interestingly, the public sector banks did well also.
That's
So
counterintuitive. Yeah.
yeah,
Go on. Go on.
so
Yeah.
so 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 traditionally, uh, if historically we look at the distribution, we will see that the NBFCs have always been a big part of PLs, but they have played in a certain ticket size.
Correct.
The remaining has been between the public sector banks and the private banks, and the private
Yeah.
banks
Yeah.
have done well. But distribution this year is telling us that the public sector banks have also done well,
Okay.
and that is an important aspect, because if you look at the product of the public sector banks, the public sector banks product, um, a lot of them are actually salaried PLs. So the fact that they've done well actually is telling us that the salaried people of the public sector banks are also taking PLs, or personal loans, and and at least some of the use cases that some public sector banks are 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 examples of checkout finance, but not in the traditional way. So if you look at the journeys of some of the large public sector banks, you will see that they have enabled a journey where you can get an instant loan dispersal, and you could use it to actually block money for an IPO.
Okay. Correct.
So
Yeah.
that is also one form of checkout finance, and it does not necessarily fall into what we have traditionally considered as checkout finance.
Understood.
So the uh, so there are newer categories of checkout finance, if I
Sure.
may use that term, and I'm just going into the second part of your question
Hmm.
that you asked. The newer categories of checkout finance may be coming from populations that are not necessarily the millennial digital savvy populations.
Okay.
They may be coming from populations that are beyond those populations. They may be coming mm, from they may be coming for use cases which are not some of the use cases which are industrialized use cases. But there are lenders who are servicing those use cases, and in these blue oceans they are gaining market share. So that is the second aspect of the report that we saw.
Sure.
um, the third thing that we saw essentially was that if you looked at collections, if you looked at collections, then uh, especially in the lower ticket sizes, the semi-urban markets picked up quicker. The non-urban markets, let me put it this way, the non-urban markets picked up quicker than the urban markets. Now, the urban markets were in lockdown for a larger period of time. So clearly, that is one of the reasons. But the differential in portfolio performance came also from urban and non-urban. Uh, uh, so uh, net, the growth in personal loans, uh, the factors that drove growth pre-pandemic, the 24 months pre-pandemic, and the factors that drove growth in pandemic after after reopen one,
Yeah.
essentially,
Yeah.
those factors at least seem to be different
Okay. Okay.
in some sense.
Okay. It's quite interesting. So just to understand checkout finance, because I find the term interesting. Checkout finance is when, say, I am buying, say, 10 items from an Amazon, and when the point comes for me to pay I get an option out there, use what, zero cost EMIs is.
Correct.
So have I understood that right?
Yes. So
Okay.
so uh, so essentially, if you think of it, the definition of checkout finance first came on some of these marketplaces.
Yeah.
Then then
Yeah.
then it came to certain categories like food,
Okay.
where it came in. Now, um, a lot of these financing would traditionally been done by the NBFCs,
Correct. Correct.
but the growth in PLs in the pandemic was not driven by the NBFCs.
Okay.
It
Okay.
was it was driven by other lender categories, and the population in those lender categories essentially uh, would have benefited from having a digital platform offered by the lender,
Sure,
which
sure.
which was lending plus something.
Yeah, yeah. I think I've got a general idea. I want to now, just kind of zoom out and get a more generic view. We spoke into quite a bit of detail about this particular trend about within personal loans and all. Now I want to take just one step back and say that and ask you that in general, are Indians borrowing more as compared to the past? Any trends that you can talk about? You know, 2021 versus 2011, or 2021 or 2020 versus say 2015. Anything that helps us compare this, because I the only data point that I had was savings having fallen down, which kind of means that if savings have fallen down, means expenses have gone up. Probably borrowing has also gone up. So can you just talk about this part? In general, are we borrowing more?
And okay, so let me break this um, into two parts. I think um, one is the end consumer behavior. Now, as an end consumer, I think more and more Indians are today aware of what is a credit score, and I think more consumers today understand that if you have a good credit score, then you can get lent to, and uh, more and more consumers today access the credit score. So in some sense, uh, discretionary demand for borrowing, there is a consumer behavior today at play that is driving this discretionary demand for borrowing. That is a consumer behavior that is there. uh, the second aspect is also that uh, if you look at something like microfinance, which 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 recovered from the AP crisis, which recovered from demonetization
By
in
AP crisis, you mean Andhra Pradesh
the
crisis as
yeah
it
the
happened. Yeah.
yeah the
Sure.
Andhra
Okay.
Pradesh crisis. Now they have brought a lot of first time borrowers into the credit system. Now, which means what? That uh, this borrower set, which otherwise would have been available as new to credit, are now available to lenders with a credit history. And consequently, it is useful for lenders to set up distribution that addresses these borrowers who have begun their borrowing journey in microfinance, have a need beyond microfinance, and therefore can be fulfilled by the other lenders. And therefore, today, Anupam, if we look at, then about 60% of India's population between the age of 18 to 65, or what the census calls as an economically active population, have a credit footprint.
60%. Wow. Okay.
60%.
It's a fairly big number. Okay.
It's a big number, and it's a number that is increasing every year, and it will continue to increase. There is no question about it that that it will continue to increase.
And when you say credit footprint, you mean it could be anybody. It could be someone who even asked for a credit card, inquired about a credit card, got it, and is using it, or it could be anybody, literally. Someone who's
Yes,
trying out, someone who's even taking out EMIs for food. I believe that's also become,
correct.
something is there. Okay.
Absolutely. but
Got it.
but
Got it.
someone who has an experience of credit servicing.
Got it. Got it.
That is the point. So the one metric that you have all that you can always look at reliably is using the population as the denominator and saying what is the percentage of the population that has access to credit. And
Correct. That's your basic penetration. Yeah. Yeah.
that's a basic penetration, and that's increased.
Wow.
Now let's think of it, uh, the difference between 5 years back and now.
Mhm.
Now the uh, the percentage of total credit that was urban versus the percentage of total credit that was non-urban. That 5 years ago and now are two completely different stories. So the gap uh, that we believed existed between urban and non-urban customers, either in terms of demand, in terms of ability to fulfill, or in terms of portfolio performance, that is narrowing.
Wow. That's also a very interesting trend. Yeah.
Yes. And if you think of it, there are three change agents broadly. One is the cheap smartphone, the second is the cheap data, and the third is the digital payments. And
Hmm.
these have accelerated this change. Uh,
Right.
now, what this means is that uh, uh, the non-urban consumer today is also used to the similar consumer experience as the urban consumer, because they have experience to the same apps, they have
Correct.
experience to UPI,
Correct.
and therefore for lenders, distribution to them doesn't necessarily mean I need to build a very different distribution strategy.
Hmm.
So distribution in non-urban has increased. The ticket size difference between urban and non-urban has narrowed, and the normalized portfolio performances are similar.
Wow. And whereas you would have thought that non-urban would be of a slightly lower credit profile than urban.
Correct. So
Aha,
so
wow.
so it is not necessary that my lifetime credit costs will be very different for a non-urban consumer that I will acquire vis-a-vis an
Yeah.
urban
Yeah.
consumer.
Yeah.
My cost of acquisition may slightly be higher,
Hmm. Hmm.
but my
Hmm.
lifetime credit cost will normalize.
Okay.
And
Got it.
and uh, the part of this is coming from your low ticket PLs.
Okay. Got it.
So in some cases the entry product will be a consumer durable,
Sure.
because
Sure.
because what they are buying, uh, they are financing. In some cases the entry
Yeah.
product
Yeah.
will be a low ticket PL, yeah, but directionally this is an irreversible change.
Right.
And
I mean, that's like saying that you sell the guy a fridge and then you kind of start selling him a house, or start selling him a
correct.
car. Wow. Amazing.
Correct.
Okay. So, folks, we'll be right back. We really went into a lot of depth out here about how the personal loan category has grown, how, uh, what Subbu said about the bridge between urban and rural has come down, how the costing of a loan to a non-urban versus an urban is also narrowing. So, Subbu, I guess the outlook from here for personal loans will be quite good then, right? What do you think?
uh, so I think it will grow.
Okay.
I don't see a reason for it to not grow. uh, Few things that I think it will grow on. And what are the signs, what is data telling us? So one is that uh, you have today or here a larger percentage of people who borrowed microfinance taking personal loans. So that is a number that will grow. You have increased distribution in non-urban. You have first time borrowers taking PL.
Hmm.
You have companies who would have sold an asset-backed finance as a first product, trying to do a PL to take advantage of the distribution, and looking at that asset-backed finance as a customer acquisition engine in some sense. So uh, there is uh, there is no reason for us to believe that personal loans as a category will degrow, or there is no reason for us to believe that personal loans as a category, um, you will have withdrawal of lenders who are serious about this category. I don't think either of
Sure.
this is going to happen. But the key from a lender's perspective is always going to be distribution strategy,
Okay.
and that is the core, because basis that strategy, essentially lenders will be able to build analytics to select the right customer, and not just select the right customer for this personal loan transaction, but select the right customer basis a customer lifetime value.
Okay, sounds like a very exciting space that's going to
Correct.
keep on changing as
Correct.
we go forward. So we'll take a break out here. So we'll come back now, and I want you to talk about credit scores in specific. Now let's shift the focus. We've spoken a lot about the industry. When we come back, folks, we're going to talk about specific credit score tips for you. Okay, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. This is a really special episode with Subhranshu Chattopadhyay, National Sales Head at CRIF Highmark, on this episode of Paisa Vaisa. Stay tuned. And welcome back to this episode of Paisa Vaisa, the CRIF Highmark special with Subhranshu Chattopadhyay, National Sales Head, CRIF Highmark. On the first part of this episode, we spoke a lot in depth about the phenomenon of personal loans and how it's increased in the last few years in India, and some very, some very interesting details like how the the rise of mobile phones or smartphones in all across India has led to the proliferation of personal loans, and the distinctions that used to exist between uh, urban and non-urban, that in fact has gone down. And of course, the most fascinating aspect to me that Subbu mentioned was that 60% of the Indian population today have some credit footprint. And that's, so I'm guessing that a lot of you listening into this episode probably already have a personal loan, and we'll get to those questions on how to choose a good personal loan just in this part of this episode. Super quick question: have scores improved, right? Because we've seen this big jump in personal loans over the last 4-5 years, but have credit scores been improving in general, going down, staying the same? What's your view on that?
So Anupam, I think again, pre-pandemic, you would have seen uh, distributions of the population becoming better, which means what? That generally the credit scores would have improved. But in the pandemic, in certain portfolios, we are actually seeing the credit scores of borrowers actually go down, and that in short term is expected. Let me also say that, because of the fact that we had a moratorium, and post that, the restructure window offered by the Reserve Bank was open till December, and there's a possibility for lenders to evaluate that again 180 days from the restructure. Now, uh, we have seen in certain portfolios, as I said, scores go down, but very importantly, what we have seen is that for people with good scores, the portfolio performance has more or less stayed the same.
Okay.
Which essentially tells us that uh, which essentially tells us about the importance of the credit score.
Mm-hmm.
That uh, that if you focus on building a good credit score, and if you are aware of what your credit score is, then two things will happen: that the lender will acquire you on terms that are beneficial for you, and secondly, because of the work that you as a consumer have done in
Mm-hmm.
understanding what goes into the credit score and your awareness of the credit score, even when an event hits, the likelihood that you have not factored for that event is low.
Okay.
uh, so and we see that uh, in the fact that more and more consumers are today coming to us looking for their credit scores.
Oh, so you can see
uh,
that in the higher traffic. Okay.
yes, we can see that in the higher traffic, and that essentially is a very good sign for us,
Mm-hmm.
because it essentially means there's an increased awareness. The awareness, and people are coming to us not just because they know there is something called a credit score, but they want to know what is their credit score, and those two are very different things. What is a credit score essentially means that as a consumer, my understanding has improved of how this is used, and that increased traffic uh, is not necessarily limited to people who take their credit score just once a year.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at traffic that comes to us, the percentage of people who check their credit scores repeatedly
Okay.
has also increased, which essentially says that as consumers we are becoming more and more aware of the need to check our credit scores regularly. And
Right.
once that happens, then directly it is a very important step in ensuring that of the overall population, the credit scores will keep on continue to improve.
Okay. That's an interesting trend. Okay. Last few questions now, Subbu. The most important one. A lot of people have, like you said, the trend of people calling out or inquiring about the credit score has increased. People who are new to credit, they will also be understanding the concept of credit scores even more. So now I need to, get this laundry list of tips on how to improve the credit scores. You could call it indirectly, uh, how to get into the culture of credit and ensure that you maintain a very good credit profile, because that is central to you getting, loans at good terms in the future. So what do you think is a nice list of tips on how to improve credit scores?
Perfect. So first is, I think, as a consumer, you need to understand what are some key benefits of a good credit score, and I will list out the top three.
Okay.
One is more options in terms of lenders. Second is access to better lending products, and third is better rates.
Okay.
So if you understand, and that is the point number one, and always point number one, that you understand what it means for you. Point number two, therefore, is you must check your scores at a regular frequency.
Mm-hmm.
That is point number two. Point number three, if you see something in your credit score and you think, why do I have this low score?
Yeah.
Why is my score so low?
Put low into perspective out here.
So most of us have been trained to think that a score of 750, a score of less than 750,
Hmm.
essentially means it's almost equal to failing a school exam.
Nice
so
comparison. Okay.
so so uh, so let me assure your listeners that it does not necessarily mean so.
Okay.
Uh, but you must know that a score is an outcome. A score is an effect. It is the effect of what? It is the effect of the data that is in your credit report. Most of us as consumers stop by looking at the score and
Hmm.
don't look at the data that follows the score.
Oh, very important.
So you have to look at the data, because the score may be something for an error that you have not done.
Hmm.
And if you look at that data, if you look at each of your credit lines and you find something that is not okay, then
Ah.
then as a consumer you should be aware that as part of the Credit Information Companies Regulation Act, there is a mechanism when you can where you can raise a dispute with the credit information company from
Yeah,
whom
yeah, yeah.
you've pulled the report.
I know what you're saying. So that's like saying that 10 years ago, I had one credit card and there was a due on that of even 10
Correct,
rupees.
correct,
Okay. And I probably settled it verbally and I put the phone down and then I forgot about it.
correct.
But in the credit record, it's still there.
It's still there.
There you go. Okay. Okay. Okay.
And
Go on, please. Yeah.
you have to raise that dispute, because that is the regulatorily allowed way where you can get that correction done.
But you won't do that for me. I have to go directly to XYZ card from, XYZ bank from whom I took it, right?
So you should come to the bureau,
Okay.
and as a bureau we have to raise that with the lender to say that Anupam has disputed this,
Ah.
and the lender then has 30 days to come back and tell us that this is the correction for Anupam or no.
Okay, okay. So I raise a dispute with you first, okay, and
Correct,
then you go back to the credit provider or whoever it is, the credit card company or personal loan or whoever it is, and then okay, okay, go on, please.
correct. Now, now let's assume that everything is okay. uh, on your credit lines. Your credit report has two sections. One is the credit line, the other is your personal identifiable information. The other thing that you should be very much aware is there a personal identifiable information that does not belong to you, that is listed in the credit report? So for example, you will have one PAN card, but if you see two PAN cards in your credit report and one does not belong to you, or you have never submitted a passport as part of a credit application and you see suddenly a passport, you must know that there's a possibility of identity theft.
Wow.
And you should take action, and you should go to the lender to say, where is this coming from, because I never submitted this to you.
Very interesting.
It's a very important aspect. It's a neglected aspect, but how it plays is that because of the cross linkage of personal identifiable information, someone else's record can get merged into your record, and that can impact your credit score.
Amazing.
It's a neglected aspect, but it's a
neglected
very,
because it's not understood. No? I mean,
Correct.
today half the conversations I have with people is it doesn't go beyond that how to improve 750, and in people's head, and I've had this conversation so many times about how people are saying that, but I pay all my credit card dues on time, all my EMIs are on time, I'm a salaried person, I am this, I'm that, and yet my credit score is low, and they just stop there, probably because they haven't really I don't know how many people have seen the credit report. See, inquiring about credit score is one thing, Subbu, but people who actually know that there is a report that they can download, do people know that?
and therefore at CRIF Highmark, what we do is we don't have a product that is just the credit score. We say, look at the score and your report. We have always said this, whether it's a free credit report that the Reserve Bank has said, or whether you are with us with a subscription, we have said that you have the credit score and the credit report, because the credit score is an outcome. It's the effect. The cause is the credit data that is there in the report.
Like people don't want to improve their studies, and then they say, why have I got low marks?
Correct.
Okay, go on. Sorry, I had to make that point there.
Precisely. The other thing is that it is not necessary that if you repay everything on time, your risk over the next 12 months or your risk over the medium term is low. Because if your borrowing profile has changed very significantly within a very short period of time, then there has to be support of a change in outcome, of a change in income, which supports that. And from a credit bureau perspective, that support is only available if you repay your enhanced borrowings consistently over a period of time. But in the time where you are transitioning, where you have a borrowing of this, and suddenly in 6 months you go from this to this, in this interim period, as bureaus, we will be to a limited degree unsure of whether it's a windfall,
correct,
whether it's something else, or whether you will be able to demonstrate that there is an income support which justifies this.
Yeah. So it's like you've gone from buying a mobile phone for 15,000 to buying a bike for 75,000.
Correct.
Yeah. So what drove that? Did you get a one-time bonus from your company?
Correct.
So yeah, got it. Go on. Very interesting.
And therefore, the repayment is one part. The growth in leverage is also another part. And therefore, the one thing that you must try to avoid as a consumer is a seesaw or a sine curve in your credit score.
Wow.
The flatter, the better. The flatter, the better.
Okay. Important tips here. Go on. Sorry.
And therefore, you must judge your need for credit. You must accommodate your spends. You must think what is discretionary borrowing and what is mandatory borrowing.
Big one, I know. Yeah. What is essential expenditure?
Correct.
We've had a lesson in that in the last one year.
You must do that, so that you don't end up increasing your credit leverage within a very short period of time, so that after that, if an event happens, your credit score is going a downward sine curve.
Mm.
Very, very important aspect, uh, because not necessary that your score will um, will be constant over a period of time, and therefore very important aspects, credit utilization, point that I was making, how you use your cards, whether you
What's I have to ask this. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I have to ask this. What's a good number for a credit utilization? If at all there is some, right? I mean,
see
let
Anup,
me let me put it this way, Subbu. If I've got a 1 lakh credit line and I'm hitting 90,000 every month, okay, and this is for credit cards, by the way, not for
correct,
because those are EMIs. That's
correct,
what I'm going to pay. But I'm talking about credit cards. What if I have a 1 lakh credit line and I'm hitting 90,000 every month, but I'm paying all of them on time,
correct.
versus someone who's got a 1 lakh credit card who just does 25,000 and also pays on time? How do they compare? Is there a
so
difference?
so theoretically, uh, you are paying on time, both of you are paying on time,
Hmm.
but you at 90,000, you are very, very close to maxing out.
Hmm.
And that then essentially is telling us as a bureau that it's a behavioral aspect. Now, if we see that historically people who have been close to max out have defaulted at a higher rate,
Ah.
then your score will be
Interesting.
lower than that 25,000 guy.
Okay. And do you can you guys figure out like if I've got 4 credit cards? कि आप लोग को मालूम नहीं पड़ता है?
नहीं मालूम तो पड़ेगा.
Okay. I
मालूम
was
पड़े
like, okay.
मालूम पड़ेगा. इनफैक्ट हमको अनुपम, वी विल ऑल्सो नो इट कि to a great degree we will know if you've had a card upgrade also, or you've
Ah,
had
oh,
or you've had a new plastic, because we will have the history
very interesting.
overall. We will also know, for example, ki whether you pay your cards in full, and that
Wow.
tells us of a certain kind of behavior. It does
Okay.
not necessarily tell us that you are more risky,
Yeah, yeah.
unless
Huh,
historically people who paid only the EMI or
huh.
20% or 30% of their balance have a very different default rate than someone
Okay.
who pays their card in full.
Okay. I'm going to throw one more at you, okay? Because this is a behavioral, like you called it a behavioral change that I have implemented in my life over the last whatever 4, 5, 6 months, and I'll tell you why. Also. So, I have started paying my credit card dues on the day I get the statement, right? Versus slightly more towards the end of the period. So I think so. My cycle is 15th to 15th. The last day used to be I think 7th or 8th, and I used to typically pay by the first. Okay. Now I'm paying the credit card on the 16th itself. Okay. So nothing has really changed for me. I've just
Correct.
advanced that into paying it here. Will that make any difference at all?
Uh, it's unlikely.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Yeah, as long as you pay within the due date,
Hmm.
it should be immaterial
Very interesting.
in some sense, because, and there's a reason for that, because most of the credit card issuers will actually report your update to us on a billing cycle basis.
Hmm.
So,
Okay.
let's say you have the billing cycle on the 15th and you pay on the 18th. So
Hmm.
your update has already come to me. The next
Oh.
update I'm going to get is on the 15th of the next month.
Correct, correct. Okay.
Contrast this with an EMI based product where the update will come at the end of the month.
Understood. Okay. Okay.
So in the card scenario, if the issuer was reporting to me at the end of the month, I would actually have an idea of your updated spend,
Hmm. Very interesting. Okay.
because what then they would report is spent position last month
Hmm.
minus monies received
Hmm. Hmm.
plus spends between 15th and the end of the month.
Ah, okay, got it, got it. Then I have only one reason for doing this because I thought that it replenishes my credit limit, right? So
Uh,
if how
Yeah, so Anupam, I think I'm just thinking aloud
Huh.
as you are saying. I think the one thing is, if as an individual, w- uh, one is that kind of individual, or we are that kind of individual who has a difficulty in tracking repayment dates
Hmm.
in a month, then it's
Hmm.
always better to do an ECS.
Correct. Yeah, which I don't do for whatever reason. Chalo, theek hai. I know this ECS thing is a big one, but yeah. Okay, go on.
Because, and I'll give you an example. If you look at the education loans as a segment,
Hmm.
so and if you looked at it, um, 4, 5, 6 years back, and
Hmm.
and you really profile the education loan book, then you would see that the nationalized bank branches at some of the premier educational institutions
Hmm.
would have the highest NPAs.
Huh? But that's counterintuitive. That's like saying that a branch in Powai, and if I'm at IIT Powai, you're saying they have higher NPS.
But there, it's again behavior, because
Okay.
as a product, I
Huh.
have a 6 month moratorium, and my contact address over there is not the contact address where I am reachable at after 6 months, because I have moved on to a new job.
Okay. Man, that is like it's like a anomaly in the, like the Matrix says, it's a glitch in the system, but very
Correct.
interesting. Yeah.
And as an end consumer, it is
Uh,
not that I don't have an intent to
to
pay,
yeah, to pay. Yeah,
or
yeah.
I don't have a capacity to pay,
It's
but I
just,
have just forgotten that my 6 month moratorium ends this month.
and
So
that's not on the credit. It's not on the loan provider. It's on me.
yes, so similar anomaly, a similar analogy. If you have a problem
Hmm.
remembering repayment dates, do your ECS.
Correct. Correct. It just takes away that much of thinking on your
Correct,
part.
correct.
Fantastic, yeah. So this is a lot of detail. I wish, maybe we should do a separate episode just on credit score. But last question: how do we choose a good loan provider? For someone who's looking for a personal loan, someone who's looking for a payday loan, whatever it is, jo bhi hai, how should they choose a good loan provider? Last question.
See, I think um, uh, you must, as a consumer, read the terms and conditions. It's a very very important aspect. It's an investment that you must make as a consumer, and there is no excuse, frankly, if you
Mm.
don't read that, because you are entering into a transaction that a court of law will uphold,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
and therefore you must invest in reading the terms and conditions. uh, in my experience, and I'll talk about my experience, uh, you you will find brands, when you go to multiple brands, you will find brands who will entertain your queries on terms and conditions, and you will find brands who will not entertain your queries on TNC, and that should be a material factor in decision making,
Mm.
because increasingly uh, fintech is becoming tech fin.
Nice perspective. Okay,
fin
technology first and finance later.
yes, technology first, personal finance later.
Wow.
And and whether it's a fintech, whether it's a lender, whether it's a traditional NBFC, whether it's a private bank, um, you will find enablement of your journey
Mm.
uh, in all of these places. It is not, you will find it in varying degrees,
Okay.
but you will find enablement. That much is very certain. And once you find that enablement, then your earliest transaction is essentially reading the TNCs and getting your doubts clarified.
Right.
If a brand is willing to invest in doing that, then that brand will ensure that over the life cycle of your association with that brand, there is a little more consumer empathy. Let me put it that way. That's the best phrase I could think of while describing.
Sure.
And that should, in some sense, be a material factor in your decision as much as the price of the loan.
As much as the price of the loan, folks. I want to just underscore that, okay? Because sometimes I feel that all we look at is the interest rate and compare, two banks or two NBFCs or two fintech apps and just focus on the rate. What Supu is saying, you need to go much, much, much beyond that. You need to read the terms and conditions. You need to figure out the customer attitude of the person giving you that loan and not just the interest rate. Am I right, Supu?
Yes, absolutely. Because the paradigm, the changing paradigm, essentially is that why should the consumer need to find a different lender every time I have a different need over my life cycle?
Huh.
And why should a lender look at my association as only a one-time association?
Nice. So you're saying that, let's say that I start my job, among the first products I'll ever take, because I'm getting a salary, right? And there's a good chance that the company that I work for already has a tie-up with ABC Bank.
Correct.
So he'll give me a banking account. The
Correct.
first thing I'm guessing he will give me is a credit card.
Yes.
Because he's already got my salary slip, so I'm
Correct.
sorted. And then you're saying that if he's giving you a credit card, it makes sense for him to capture my entire life cycle.
Yes.
Help me when I'm looking for my first motorcycle loan, because again, that's just
Correct.
something that you buy first. Then I'll upgrade to a car. So take me from a two-wheeler loan to a four-wheeler loan. Okay. And then finally, house. That's it. So you're saying the same person should do that, but that's not what happens, right? I mean, every time I've got to go and search, and I'll go here and I'll go there and I'll go for the interest rate. Huh. Okay. Go on, Subbu. Sorry.
So I think from a consumer standpoint also, how we view our lender association is equally important.
Okay.
Do we view our lender association as a transactional association, or do we view our lender association as saying, I have invested in finding this lender, so why don't I invest the first time I want to find something? I will find that multi-product lender, but I know I will believe the brand, and then I will believe the product.
Very interesting. Fantastic. Thanks, Yasubu. I mean, that's some pretty good advice out there. Maybe we'll come back later, for a subsequent episode and do something on credit scores. But folks, that's a wrap on this episode of Paisa Paisa. My guest, Subhrangshu Chattopadhyay, National Sales Head, Criff Highmark. The first time that Criff Highmark has come on Paisa Paisa. So, Subhrangshu, thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
Thank you, Anupam. A pleasure.
Right. Hope to have you back sometime soon. And listeners, if you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I'm your host, Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening to Paisa Paisa.